London is anything but short of spaces to display art. One immediately thinks of the myriad museums, galleries, publicly commissioned art, and public but non-commissioned artworks. But these all have one factor in common: they are above ground. So what happens when art goes underground? Literally. Although the London Underground was a Victorian invention, in the early 20th century it became a hub of modernism. 50 years after it opened in 1863, the expanded lines needed overhauling modernisation, not only to coordinate the actual running of the trains, but the image of the Underground itself. This job fell onto Frank Pick, a lawyer, businessman and employee of the Underground Group, with a strong, if at times conservative, interest in modernism, with a drive for bringing it to the London public. Pick was what later became known as a new medievalist, using medieval cathedrals as a metaphor. His bold vision for the new underground system was meant to fuse art with function, and artists with society, even if that art was made by a machine or linked to industrialisation. And like a cathedral, Pick hoped his modernist subterranean transport network would serve to unite various social groups. Through the 1930s, he would bring together some of the greatest artists, architects, designers, topographers and engineers of his day to make the Tube effectively one of the largest and most influential art spaces in the country. Of course, the birth of art on the Underground didn't just come about because Frank Pick liked modern art. Pick was a businessman and hoped his vision would bring profits to the Underground and some of the attractions featured in its early posters. As one scholar put it, it was about reconciling romantic corporatism with corporate business. Pick was even known for monitoring the Underground's financial records with the same obsessive attention to detail as he would later spend on the art he put in it. But as he would put it,
I sit behind commerce, art, and I know that behind art there must be good custom, morality, we call it.
Pick's self-prescribed moral mission was to educate the public about modern art by taking it outside the small elite circles of gallery patrons. In 1924, he hired the architect Charles Holden to erect new modernist underground stations that would make the public transport system into a public art project. Holden's design was simple, functional, and minimally classical, but it was also consistent. Unifying the stations under a common style met Pick's utopian ambitions for a unified society. The Tube had uniform signage and was branded with a famous roundel logo and typeface designed by Edward Johnston. In the 1920s and 30s, the Underground was aggressively promoted as the epitome of speedy and stylish, bold, clean, efficient and modern. But it would be posters that proved to be the perfect medium for making modernism accessible, or at least for achieving some of the transformative properties of so-called high art. As Pick observed,
there is a protective habit in city dwellers of not looking at things at all, which is fortunate, otherwise they could hardly go on living in some cities. Posters come to disturb and destroy such habit or convention.
Backtrack to 1908. After his appointment as head of publicity of London Transport in that year, Frank Pitt set out to create designated spaces for publicity and transportation information at station entrances. He designated specific poster boards for the promotional efforts of the Underground system, allocating official grid-like areas to display maps and Tube posters. In reducing the clutter at station entrances, as well as placing posters on the front of buses and trams, Pick established the Underground as a leader in graphic design, creating an art gallery that was accessible to every citizen in London. In 1908, the pictorial poster campaign was initiated. Its aims were to create a positive environment between the Underground and its passengers and provide information, all while demonstrating the novelties and achievements of the system itself. The first poster was commissioned by John Hassell in 1908. No need to ask a policeman succinctly demonstrates how passengers could consult the Tube map to find the information they were looking for. The young American artist Edward McKnight Cowper, whom later would become one of the greatest poster designers of the 20th century, designing for Shell, General Post Office and Great Western Railways, was also selected to create posters in this early period. Throughout the 1920s and 1930s, other emerging artists were brought in to create promotional posters, encouraging Londoners to travel on the Underground. This new wave of posters sought to advertise new stations of the Underground and encourage traffic flow at off-peak and weekend travel times. While conveying these messages, the posters of the Underground began showcasing the emerging art styles of the 20th century, displaying examples of Cubism, Surrealism, Abstraction, and Art Deco. Indeed, throughout Pic's patronage, featuring artists included Austin Cooper, Man Ray, Tom Eckersley, and Hans Slager. These posters may even have influenced a new generation of younger artists to pick up the mantle of modernist experiments in a fairly conservative artistic climate. Students at the Royal College of Art purchased reproductions of Calfer's posters sold by the Underground, and in 1926 the V&A helped Pic circulate more reproductions to art schools outside London. Initially, the posters sparked a huge debate in the world of advertising. One advertising manager wrote a furious letter to a newspaper in 1921, complaining about impossible ducks, futuristic trees, vermilion grass, and such like absurdities. But despite the business needs that enabled modernism to hit the Underground, Pic proved that just because art was suddenly subject to utilitarian needs, this did not compromise its innovation or autonomy. Ultimately, his poster campaign met his democratizing goals. Looking on from this long history of commissioning artists to produce posters for display, we move forward to 1986. Here, after a short lapse, an active commissioning campaign began again. However, the new aim was to concentrate on fine art rather than poster design.
Art on the Underground is a pioneering organization in commissioning contemporary artworks that transform the journeys of millions on the tube every day. From large-scale commissions at Gloucester Road Station to the pocket tube map cover commissions, Art on the Underground has gathered a roll call of the best artists over 15 years, maintaining art as a central element of transport for London's identity and engaging passengers and staff in a sense of shared ownership. Through its various programs, this project creates an atmosphere for debates and dialogues on such critical themes as race, class, gender, and power. Since its inception, Art on the Underground presented acclaimed projects by UK-based and international artists, allowing Art on the Underground to remain at the forefront of contemporary debate on how art can shape public space. Starting from early 2000s, Art on the Underground collaborated with contemporary art institutions such as Serpentine and Whitechapel galleries in commissioning artists like Cindy Sherman, who is exploring stereotypes of women in Western society and throughout history, David Shrigley, whose work is for people who can laugh at crises and little tragedies of everyday life, Gabriela Rotzko's work that allows audiences' imagination to explore the simple things in contemporary urban environment. Traveling underground or spending any length time there is not a natural human inclination. As part of one thing leads to another, everything is connected, a series of artworks commissioned for the Jubilee line in 2011. Artist Daria Martin undertook a survey to discover passengers' daydreams as they traveled on the Jubilee line. Martin conducted a face-to-face survey of 800 passengers. She also visited Freud Museum, based near the northwest end of the Jubilee line, and took photographic images of the objects on Freud's desk. Both sides, customers and staff, have been involved in the creation of Art on the Underground. In his 2011 What is the City but the People project by conceptual artist Jeremy Deller, a passport-sized booklet was given to operational staff on Piccadilly line, with drivers and platform staff encouraged to use the quotes in their daily communications with customers. Coming from a wide range of philosophical, political, historical sources, the quotes presented a thought-provoking rumination of life in the city, especially when heard on the London Underground. In 2017, Art on the Underground commissioned 10 artists, including Tanya Bruguera, Sol Calera, Alexander Da Cunha, and Gillian Wearing, to make an artwork for sites across the Tube network in response to the EU referendum. The London is Open campaign aimed to send a message across London of openness, internationalism, diversity, and commonality as a part of a wider London is Open campaign led by the Mayor of London.
We've got 270-odd tube stations. We've got millions of people who travel on public transport. What a great way to send a message with great art.
A year-long program of women artists was commissioned in 2018, which marked 100 years since the Representation of the People Act, enabling all men and some women of the age of 30 to vote for the first time. To mark this, Art on the Underground commissioned work by an international selection of women artists, with highlights including Heather Phillipson, Linda, Romanian artist Gheta Bratescu, French artist Marie Giacotti, British artist Jade Montserrat, and Nigerian-born artist Njideka Kunili-Crosby. Throughout history, women artists have questioned feminist identities, gender roles, and sexual politics to push for social change. The program gives space to the diverse publics that make up our society, addressing structural gender imbalance, which is prevalent in the arts and in particular the public arts. As we approach the prospect of the UK leaving the European Union and edge towards an uncertain future, the 2019 program is exploring what it means to be on edge, individually, collectively, politically, and socially. The 2019 program is looking at the role artists can play in developing utopian ideas of togetherness and belonging.
The last few years has seen the team at the London Transport Museum focusing more on the role transport plays in contemporary London society, conducting research through social media to gain an idea of personal experiences and reactions to specific campaigns, such as their journey to Pride this summer. This saw the team bringing new voices to their collection to ensure that the history and narratives they explore reflect the modern experiences of a diverse representative group. Through a simple visual language, notably the use of colour and short documentary film, they were able to communicate a distinct message of support across its LGBTQ community. The campaign was carried out on the Underground over the weekend of Pride in London this summer, aiming to build a collection of materials to reflect and celebrate LGBTQ experiences of transport in London. Tube station posters featured photographs of members of the TfL staff, partners and community, and transforming the transport network into a more inclusive environment for its customers. The iconic Underground, typically red roundel, was given a splash of colour to signify LGBTQ inclusivity, but maintained its widely recognised shape. The whole campaign can be viewed as an act of acknowledgement by the London Transport team of the diversity of its users and the role it plays in their day-to-day lives, whilst at the same time challenging problems of homophobia and transphobia on public transport. The Mayor of London discussed how this could be used to send out an international message to the city's visitors about London as a welcoming social sphere, inclusive of all races, backgrounds, sexual orientations and gender identities. The project aimed to collect and preserve exactly the social side of the story, the thoughts, feelings and experiences of people travelling to the parades. It not only acted to raise awareness for the LGBTQ community, but showed how the Underground was able to engage with a significantly modern society.
So why put art in the Underground? With this program, everyday commuters are exposed to numerous artists from around the world, each bringing forth a different perspective. Keeping in mind that about 40% of Londoners were not born in the UK, this global perspective is vital in order to reach its diverse audience. Although this project started as a way to re-engage with vacant, unused spaces, it has become an internationally acclaimed art program. Public art of the London Underground can be a tool for political expression and social commentary. The Underground is then a platform, no pun intended, for communication between artists and the masses about subversive themes affecting our everyday lives. However, we must not confuse public art with illegal street art or graffiti. All of these works are publicly funded, commissioned, and thus carefully curated, controlled, and commodified by the government. In this way, the artworks may challenge some of the structures of society, but their very existence is still fundamentally representative of the capitalist economy that is in place. Then again, it's free. This relocates art from a more traditionally private, elite sphere to a public one, available to all, regardless of social class or distinction. And so, the social divisions between gallery goer and average commuter are extinguished. There is no hierarchizing of vision from one individual to the next. Furthermore, exposure to art in public spaces can foster a sense of community and ownership, the idea that this is my city, my space, and these works are here for me.
When thinking about art in terms of Marx's concept of value, it is interesting to consider how an artwork's value is validated in terms of exchange. Is its exchange value validated by commission or by public engagement with the piece? In Marx's discussion on exchange value, he speaks about the relative form and equivalent form as, and I quote, two intimately connected, mutually dependent and inseparable elements of the expression of value. In terms of art, one could argue that an artwork's value is established relative to the viewer's interaction. But then, to recognise the value of an artwork by mode of equivalence would involve the economizing of the viewer's gaze or engagement with the artwork. Both the artist's practice of creation as well as the viewer's active participatory gaze must be determined as values to enter an equation of exchange. In this way, there is an argument to be made for the economization of art in the underground, both in terms of Marxist exchange and furthermore in how the artwork is commissioned by the government. It is true that the work is publicly exhibited to the masses. However, it is finally curated and conditioned by the government, which in turn hinges on Foucault's concept of discipline via institutional space and visibility. In this respect, then, art in the underground may be in an exchange with the public, but is it a fundamentally economic exchange? And can the underground act as an institutional space that disciplines by method of display?